Hello everyone, Corey May back again. Let's see. Our prompt is when there is an outbreak of a dangerous contagious disease such as Ebola, what are the pros and cons of locking down the area, town, county, or country and forbidding all movement of people in or out of the area? Oh, that's a really interesting topic. Actually, I have some background on this because I teach government, and we did, when that was the outbreak scare was going on, we actually looked into it and talked about it. Was it 2 years ago? So let me check if I think I might have something here. Let me look in my bookmarks. That'd be the first place I would start, actually, given that I have some stuff here. Oh, good, my cat just fell. Ebola, yeah, right here. Okay, well, that's just going to be the background on it. We're talking about what are the pros and cons of locking it down. Okay, well, let's take a look here. Pros and cons in area from disease outbreak. Maybe? Federalist. Pros and cons of a travel ban to a fight of Ebola. Hold on, let's take a look here real quick. Let's go back to what this source. 21 maps and charts that explain Ebola. Okay, it was first discovered in current strain's the deadliest. Alright. The longer a person has it. Okay, so we're looking at our symptoms. Okay, so maybe in terms of looking at kind of holding them is you got to actually look at in terms of the incubation period and making sure that you actually have them, you hold them for, what does it look like, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, at least a week, and then the early symptoms come in 8 to 12 days. Okay, so a pro to locking down an area would be that if you keep everybody out for, 7 or 8 days, you might be, I don't know, maybe that'd be a con, sorry. What do we have here? How can we fight the outbreak? Okay. Let's go down and look here. Unprecedented, okay, well, obviously keeps getting worse, yeah, but it didn't get that worse. I mean, this was 2 years ago. West Africa, given the fact that it's, health programs and funding is a lot less, that makes sense. Expect to accelerate, okay, obviously. People have contractable U.S. at the time. OS, yeah, we know that. Better healthcare system. We only had one. Heart disease, much less, or much more, sorry. 9 times more contagious than, sorry, I hate these guys, measles. Generally known, okay, we already know where is it likely to go next. Okay, so in terms of just looking at these charts, even though we haven't really looked at anything specific to pros and cons of locking it down, it looks like, in terms of just looking at, reading the first sentence of these, is if you lock it down, the pro would be that, yeah, you could keep it in one area, especially if you control an area. I mean, you had closed off towns. If you look back in the bubonic plague, where's that? You had that, but where's that one? Sorry, there's the one that was mentioned in terms of its HIV and measles. Oh, sorry, is this one? Deadlier than the big bubonic plague, but less deadlier than untreated HIV. Infectious. Okay. So yeah, in terms of, if you were to look at it in terms of this, if you were to lock it down and go back to that previous chart that I was looking at, in terms of the when it actually becomes contagious, if you were to hold everybody within an area, it seems like you're going to be able to stop them, but you're going to kill specifically where it's at, since it's in Africa, and looking at the fact that they're not really equipped to handle it, then you're going to kill a huge amount of people in that area. So the con is that it's very contagious, given the fact that the longer the person has it, the more contagious that it gets, and it spreads easier. So therefore, in terms of locking it down, you might be able to keep it in an area, but it's going to be more deadly in that area. Just based on this one site. I'm actually kind of glad this topic kind of worked out for me, at least in this sense so far. Yeah, I mean, look, the more you hold it, specifically when you add it into the fact that it was getting worse at the time, the countries where it actually is ravaging, the fact that it's ravaging West Africa and Liberia, Sierra Leone in particular, and that you have it being more contagious the longer you have it, and that at the time the infections were expected to rise. That makes sense given the fact that the longer you have it, the more contagious it is. And then you add in the fact that you can talk about, yeah, this chart showing that it's worse in terms of just not being able to equip to handle it. You know, Guinea, 100,000 population, you only have 10 doctors, and that's, I mean, look at the United States, the difference. I know we're talking about it as a whole, it didn't mention anything specific, but talking about where it spread or originated, that causes a lot of issues, and that's a con. You don't have the people that qualified to actually handle the disease. So if you were to contain it in an area, and specifically looking at where it was in Africa, that's where we're at. Okay, let's go look at some other resources, because I know that's the point of this project. So we got some pros and cons of lockdown. So let me open this tab up, a couple tabs up here. Let's take the first four, and I know that I'll look into it, but I want to look at something I mentioned earlier, incubation of Ebola. Just basically from the WHO, the World Health Organization site, symptoms of Ebola virus disease. Incubation time interval from infection is 2 to 21 days. So yeah, looking 3 weeks, not even knowing that you would have something like that. Fatigue, muscle pain, headache, sore throat. So basically flu-like symptoms. Or basic cold. Alright. Ebola hemorrhagic fever, quarantine period. Let's add into this the quarantine period. Oh, Wikipedia's all the way down here. Okay, we'll come back to the incubation, but I wanted to look at these pros and cons articles that we're looking at. The Federalist. I don't know how actually if this is really a reputable site. Department of Homeland Security announced Tuesday that all travelers Ebola outbreak countries will be funneled through one of 5 U.S. airports with enhanced screening. Okay, so you're talking about funneling in terms of if you don't lock down, in particular what you're saying here, you kind of, they were limiting so that they could have a better screening process. But again, that's a con, because if you're running into people that haven't shown the signs of symptoms, with its incubation being, what did it say, 2 to 21 days? that's from the World Health Organization, they usually know what they're talking about, then doesn't matter how much you screen or how narrow you put it down, you're going to have some trouble. And I mean, if you look at this, you have Dulles, Chicago, O'Hare, Newark, and Atlanta's airports. Those are major airports regardless. JFK as well. You're putting out in major hubs. You would think that if they were to do that and actually kind of talk about using those in terms of narrowing to funnel them, you wouldn't put them through five of your most major airports. You'd put them through smaller city airports in hopes of actually limiting and containing it. Right? Am I making sense? Alright, let's look at this next source here. Pros and cons of Sierra Leone's Ebola lockdowns. Part of their bid to combat Ebola, the population more than 6 million people were obliged to stay at home for up to 3 days straight on 2 occasions during the past year. Okay, well, 3 days, given the fact that's only the early part of symptoms. If they don't show up in those 3 days, then it's not going to work. And you might limit, so that's a positive, but again, if it gets out, you're still causing problems. I mean, this just seems like a link in terms of in terms of concern, just in currently thinking about the Zika virus in the Olympics, even though that turned out to really not be much of a problem. During lockdowns, thousands of health workers go door to door in search of people showing symptoms of infection. But again, you're limiting it and containing possibly, but for only 3 days. Your con is that the incubation period isn't necessarily through. So you got people that aren't there. Okay, so they identified 263. Whoops, I hate those. 263 cases of Ebola among 900 people found to be sick, and more than 100 bodies. Okay. How can we fight the Ebola outbreak? Let me make sure I'm doing this. Okay. Think aloud while I search and learn. Alright. Okay. How can we fight Ebola? Have this affected, you think, your medicine health community? Current outbreak killed almost 2,300 people so far, and this is linking back to September of 2014. Viruses and mortality rate up to 90% in humans. There's no treatment, cure, or vaccine. And yeah, that makes sense given the fact that, that's why people were so afraid of it. Women have accounted for 75% of infections. So it looks like it's more prevalent in women. And that's an issue given the fact that if you weren't to contain it right, the majority of the population of the world is female. So therefore you think that it's easier to hit the majority of the population if 75% of it. And I know it's only 51 to 49, male, female, roughly, but still, that's an issue too. And I don't know if it actually spreads to babies. Let's actually look at that. That's something that we're thinking about. Could an Ebola infection spread to the baby in an impregnated woman? Now, I know this might not be an issue, but still, think about it. Think about it. I mean, that's another human being. Let's pull up the find feature because we're getting towards the end here. I'm going to have to upload another video. Birth. No. 1 4. Childbirth, 3 worst affected countries. No. Okay. I'm going to pause this right here. I will add up another 5-minute one to kind of finish this line of thought. All right? See you in a bit.